What's up, you guys? Welcome to our final installment of the Strength for the Struggle series, where we are tackling different obstacles, the most common obstacles people have to taking care of themselves and being consistent on their wellness journey. And today we are going to be talking specifically about caretaking and grief. So this one's got more of an emotional side to it. And so the tips that I'm going to give you are not only going to be about, how to move forward and take action, but also how to take care. I think that's the most important thing to take away from today's video already, is that without taking care of yourself, it really is going to be hard to take care of others and to move forward. And so many times we get that order wrong, and out of necessity, out of survival, out of stress response. And so we don't necessarily make sure that we keep the main thing, which is taking care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. There are a lot of different ways that we can end up in caretaking roles, some that we expected and some that we did not plan for. But a lot of times I think we're not necessarily taught how to find that balance, especially if the caretaking came from something that was unexpected or sudden. It becomes like a survival response to just go all in, taking care of them, figuring out what their needs are. And we don't always come back to self. What do I need to stay well despite this circumstance? Common challenges that you might experience is having no time, little to no energy, the emotional and physical exhaustion that can come from grieving someone, grieving their former state of health or whatever you thought your life was going to be like, or you thought their life was going to be like, but then also the emotional exhaustion of the realities of their situation and yours, but also physical exhaustion. Sometimes caretaking is about, staying up late, getting up early, being up at all hours of the day and the night to help fill in the gaps for someone else. And both of those can lead to emotional and physical exhaustion that can just really be hard to manage. And then we have guilt around prioritizing yourself over something else, perceivably over something else, or just generally finding that time for yourself at all. Oh, and of course, we have common feelings of guilt over the opportunity to prioritize yourself. I think a lot of people struggle with that even when they do have the space and the time to rest or to do something for themselves, they feel like they could be doing more, or they could be more productive with that rest time. And that's often something that sends us into overfunctioning and overworking, even in a caregiving situation where there could be more balance. So we're going to talk today about what you need to do to just find harmony. The concept of balance and everything being equally topped off in your life, in all areas of your life, is very idealistic. And so I want you to come at this from an approach of harmony. How can I, maybe my glasses are different sizes and one's more full than the other one, but how can I find my own personal harmony with the things that are on my plate that not only takes care of, because most of the time when we're caregiving, there is a true love and concern for our loved ones. So not only taking care of them, but also allowing some of that love, care, and concern to spill back into yourself. Now, it may go without saying, but when you do not do this, you will find that your body will start to shut down for you. That can come with all kinds of health conditions, anywhere from heart disease and, stress-related disorders to just random ailments like injuries, being injury prone, or just not having a lot of sleep and high cortisol levels, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all the different things from simply just not taking care. It can begin to take a toll. And so if we're thinking about it that way, this hard work of making time for yourself is really the short way forward. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes we can feel like, nope, I don't have time for that. I'll do it later. That's just going to waste time. But really, it's the best way to save time and to save yourself, to do this work along the way. The first thing that I want to encourage you to do if you find yourself in this position is you've got to feel your feelings. And I know that when you're in that headspace of caregiving, the other person's needs come before yours in that moment. But that doesn't mean that there can't be some moments where you really allow yourself to emotionally go through and move through what's coming up for you. I know, like, a lot of times people say, I don't want to cry in front of them, or I don't want to lose my cool in front of my kids, or, there is an element of needing to contain emotions in certain situations. But I think we go into a riskier territory when we do not allow those emotions to surface at any point. And so if you are primarily just concerned on how is this caretaking role affecting me physically, I'm going to challenge you to kind of go into how it's affecting you emotionally first, because that is the foundation for every goal you might set, everything you want to get back to. You cannot do yourself out of feeling your feelings. And so sometimes people's like, I'm checking off the boxes. I'm just doing this and I'm being very productive and I'm taking care of them and I'm showing up for there, and they're checking off boxes, and it is very productive. But we've got to remember that our emotional world runs on a different measure. Right? And it needs space, it needs time, it needs acknowledgement. It's not necessarily a checkbox that we can either do or not do. We really have to create that space. And so what this could look like for you is allowing yourself to take some time to be intentional about your emotional experience. There may be times where your emotions just get the best of you in that moment, and they're not necessarily something you've controlled, but there might be times where you can really give yourself a moment to check in. Get out your feelings wheel, look at the feelings wheel and say, in this moment, I am feeling. And this can be a routine thing that you do on the way to or from a caretaking relationship situation. Like, say, if you're checking on someone at their home, this can be something that you allow yourself to do on the way back. Your mind is going to say, I want to distract from the stress of it all. I just don't want to think about it. But I'm going to ask you to lean into naming the emotion that's coming up for you at some point. Maybe it's a few moments at the end of the day. Maybe it's a few moments at the beginning of the day. And it doesn't have to be long, but it does need to happen where you actually check in with yourself. How am I feeling emotionally? Where am I feeling it in my body? What is my body and my mind needing in order to do this well, do this better, or take care of where I am emotionally? The next thing that I want you to think about with this is finding your support system in your community. Caretaking and the grief that comes around it can be very isolating, because there are a lot of responsibilities. And sometimes it's like, I'll just do it myself because, coordinating and trying to figure out this new normal along with other people's schedules and maybe some of your friends and family that would otherwise be around. It can kind of feel like it's hard to intertwine those two worlds together. But community is what gives breath and life into your situation. And so if you find that you are isolated from your community or feeling like you can't fully share with your community, I would encourage you to find some people within your support system that you could share with. Maybe you don't share everything fully with them, but maybe that's even something that you tell them, is that, hey, I'm not at a place where I really want to go into the full out details of what I'm going through, but I really value your friendship. I value our relationship and want to bring you in a little closer to my experience just to be with me, just to have space. That could be something that you can kind of talk to with your trusted support system. Now, not everybody's going to really fit this category, and that's okay, but it is imperative that you have some people in your life in some capacity that are able to just be with you with no expectations, but just fully there. It's a hard thing to do, to ask for help, especially when you're the helper primarily in this situation. But again, this entire lesson is about, what do I need to build myself up so that I can show up for other people? This could be having a professional like a therapist that you can just fully, have an objective sounding board for the things that you're going through. There are a lot of community groups that are around caregiving and grief, so maybe you could tap into one of those. It will take a level of vulnerability, but again, playing off of the first point, that emotional side and that vulnerability that it takes to get to that emotional side is so important for your overall functioning. And so finding your support system, accessing community, and asking for help are the three components of this tip that I want you to really make a plan for how you can make that happen. It's not going to come naturally, perhaps, and maybe you might be a little embarrassed or, feel a little bit like you want to keep some things private, and that is okay too. Just because you ask for help doesn't mean that the other person gets, 100% of your experience or the details of what's going on, that doesn't mean that you owe them that. Another tip I'm going to give about how to do caretaking well is that you still get to have boundaries, even though you're in a caretaking role. You are helping, but you're not just the help. You know what I'm saying? So you have to kind of remember that. I know it's easy for like your identity to kind of get wrapped up in caretaking. I know of people who have been in such a caretaking role that when that relationship ends for whatever reason, they really struggle with finding themselves because they've lost themselves. They've lost themselves in the lifestyle and the routine, and completely turning their attention to someone else's life. They've almost forgotten who they are, what they need, what they want. And so your boundaries along the way not only protect you physically and emotionally, but it protects you as a person. Say that I'm still a person and I still have a capacity and a limit, you know. That is a great way, hard way, but a great way that you can just honor your boundaries and honor your mental health in these types of situations. So don't go into a caretaking situation assuming that any and everything that is asked of me is something that I have to do and that I have to have the capacity for. So with that tip, I want you to think about 3 boundaries. If this is something that you're going through currently, I want you to think about 3 boundaries, whether they be, you know, permanent boundaries, temporary boundaries that you need to set right here and right now in order to move forward in your caretaking role. And let's talk about your routine for a second for this last tip, because what happens is that when we are thrown into a caretaking situation or even a season of loss, it completely changes your world, you know? And so there is a period of adjustment where things will not look how they used to, and they may not ever go back to how they used to be. But there is going to be a period of time where maybe things come to a full stop, you know, and you're just really in the thick of it, trying to figure it out one day at a time. But eventually, you know, give yourself some grace with this, but eventually your routine and your ability to find time to take care of yourself by moving more often, eating well, staying hydrated, getting some sleep, you know, managing your stress, engaging in some hobbies and doing some things for you. Those elements of your routine are eventually going to be your lifeline for making it as you move forward. And so it may feel selfish in the moment to make time for these things. It may feel like you're stealing time away from your loved one, or again, that guilt may come up for you around how you're spending your time. But you have to remember that is the heartbeat of everything that you are doing. All right. And your loved one is going to be better for it. If you're going through a grieving journey, your grieving is going to be helped by you just finding small ways to pour back into your mental and your physical health. And so you're going to have to revamp and adapt what that looks like. But I think if your heart's posture and your intent is still in the space of holding on to some healthy routines that just kind of give you a sense of self and a sense of structure in your life, there's going to be a later point where you're going to be able to get back to those things in a more full way, but they just need to happen. Some of them, maybe not everything, but a couple of things just need to happen as soon as you feel like you have the capacity to do so. The mindset anchor that I want you to have for this area in particular is harmony. Now, remember I said balance kind of assumes that every aspect of life is going to get an equal dose of energy, time, and effort. And although that would be nice if we could just find that, you know, perfect place where everything is topped off perfectly, but in the reality, things are going to look different depending on the day, depending on what's going on with your loved one, depending on how you are feeling emotionally. And so harmony allows a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more of an adaptable essence to what we're getting at, which is, do I feel like with these pieces in my life together that there's some level of harmony where I can coexist, take care of myself, take care of them, and feel like there's an ebb and flow to the way my life is moving? Or have I gotten stuck in some black and white, all or nothing thinking based in stress, based in guilt, based in having super high expectations of myself, and thus leading to burnout? And so if you can focus on what does harmony look like, I think you're going to be better off mentally and physically. And then also I think it's going to help with the subsequent burnout effects that being a caretaker can have over time. All right, you guys, I really appreciate you tuning in for today's video. And I hope these tips are not only helpful to you in thought, but helpful to you in practice. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.